Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. And the United Rugby Championship has just announced record-breaking broadcast figures for the inaugural competition and season that we saw culminate in the Stormers lifting the URC trophy in June earlier this year. Now, we kind of sort of expected to see a much bigger sort of TV audience, given the fact that, first of all, competition was going to be boosted by an additional two teams, but maybe more importantly, that it was going to be the big four South African teams that were going to be moving to Europe and playing in a URC, and no sort of, from a South African perspective, no sort of Super Rugby to kind of not distract you, but sort of, you would focus on Super Rugby because of the Bulls, Stormers, Lions, and Sharks playing there, and you wouldn't necessarily give much attention to the likes of a Pro 12 or Pro 14. However, with the move and with the restructuring of the competition, they have announced very, very impressive broadcast figures for the first season. When we go through some of the numbers, and it's very interesting to sort of see just how important South African teams are to this competition, and I think we'll sort of give a bit of an idea of just why it's so important that they're going to be playing in the Challenge Cup and the European Champions Cup, or the Heineken Cup, which will probably be renamed and stuff like that in the coming future, because there's incredible value in South African teams from an audience point of view. Before you do that, please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Now, the first sort of season was broadcast across a number of broadcasters, I think what was a sort of a big add-on to them were the likes of there being so many free-to-air broadcasters. There was BBC Wales, BBC Northern Ireland, Mediaset, RTE, S4C, TG4, for example, also free-to-air channels over in Europe, which are broadcasting the competition, as well as in South Africa, SuperSport, Premier Sports in the UK and Ireland, and also, for example, having their own URC.TV streaming platform, where if you weren't in a territory which was covered by a broadcaster, you could subscribe to the platform and watch. As a result, the first season had a viewership of 34.6 million across the 7,000 hours of coverage. 34.6 million viewers. That was what the viewership was for this competition. It was a 169% increase from the 2020-2021 Pro 14, as well as the Rainbow Cup. So including the Rainbow Cup as well as thing, it was a 169% increase on both of those competitions combined in this. The cumulative average audience per game was 230,000 people. So 230,000 people are watching a URC game, your standard sort of URC game. The biggest sort of round was round 3, where almost 3 million people tuned in to watch. It was very specifically 2.892 or 2 million people, 892,000 people tuned in to watch the third round. The cumulative audience from Italy was 1.6 million. The average audience per round in the regular season was 1.7 million. So 1.7 million people watched matches throughout every weekend. So it's pretty impressive when you can go to, like, for example, sponsors and sit there saying, the entire competition is being watched by 1.7 million people every weekend. Those are sort of the numbers they are going to be using. The final itself was a big TV milestone for the league, because a total of 1.25 million people watched the Stormers versus Bulls in the URC Grand Final. Interestingly enough, 41% of that 1.25 million actually came outside South Africa, and 15% of it came via RTE, which is a free-to-air service in Ireland. So that's quite interesting. The fact that even though it was a South African match, less than 60% of the audience that actually watched it were in South Africa. Now, obviously, there's a very large expat audience, but I think it does show there is a lot of interest in the league from the other nations. And then if we look at sort of the top 10 sort of most watched regular games, and I think this is a very big boost for SA Rugby in terms of when they go to any negotiating party. Of the 10 highest watched regular matches during the regular season, 7 of them had South African teams. 7 had South African teams. Interestingly enough, there were actually none of the derbies, South African derbies or anything like that, were actually within the top 10. The most watched regular game was Ospreys versus Sharks at 580,000. We then had Cardiff versus Bulls at 560,000. Munster versus Stormers at 538,000. Sharks versus Scarlets at 531,000. The Munster Ulster Derby at 523,000. Munster versus Connacht 521,000. Munster versus Sharks, 484,000. Ospreys versus Munster, 480,000. Ulster versus the Lions, 468,000. And Dragons versus the Stormers, 445,000. So, no Italian teams within that, but interesting to see also no Scottish teams, for example. So very much sort of the Irish, Welsh, and the South African teams who seem to be bringing the biggest sort of audience, TV audiences to their matches. I'm quite glad that, for example, the Lions are part of that, so they can try and find some financial backing and some sponsorships and sit there saying people are actually watching us, but people actually do care about us. The most viewed team in the league was the Stormers, which is no surprise given the fact that they, first of all, play the most matches alongside the Bulls, as well as their playoffs, which, their audience totaled 7.2 million, of which 1.25 was in the final itself. They were followed by the Bulls, shock and horror, Munster, Sharks, and Leinster. So, all your playoff teams, really, who had the biggest audiences across the league. For each side, for each country, Stormers were the top South African side, Munster the top Irish side, Ospreys were the top Welsh side, Benetton was the top Italian side, and Edinburgh was the most watched Scottish side. If you look at some of the derby matches, for example, Munster versus Ulster bringing in 523, the Irish derbies were all pretty much over 400,000. The top 5 games from South Africa were Sharks versus Scarlets, Stormers versus Leinster, Lions versus Munster, Sharks versus Leinster, and Bulls versus Glasgow Warriors. So very, very interesting, and if you want to look at the full article, for example, we will have a link in the description to our website, which has all the various figures and stuff like that. But I think what's quite important is South African teams being there has helped. It's definitely helped. And, I think that there was a bit of worry about whether on the back of leaving Super Rugby and stuff like that, whether we were going to actually lose a lot of audience. However, as we can see by the TV figures, there is quite a lot of interest. And we saw it from the channel, we saw as the competition went by, it took a while for people to start sort of caring about the competition. But I'd say January, February was really like sort of flipped the switch, and suddenly people were actually quite invested. And I think we are set for another fantastic season coming up, especially moving into a World Cup year, which is going to be very interesting. But let me know what you think of the figures down in the comments below. Please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steven. I'll chat to you soon.